This is the pre-conference briefing, the video format for the New Mexico Annual Conference session of 2017. This is Randall Parton, the Provost of the New Mexico Annual Conference, and I serve as Chair of the Annual Conference Planning Team. I want to offer you greetings and welcome on behalf of the Annual Conference Planning Team and give you a quick overview of how our video presentation will unfold. We'll cover some basic information, the what, where, and when about our annual conference session this year. I'll share our conference theme and our focus, our scriptural touchstone. I'll share some information about our guest preacher, our early bird workshops. I'll address some of the content, the business, and issues that we'll be working on at annual conference. I'll give you a brief overview of our schedule together, and then direct you to where you can get answers to your questions. Our New Mexico Annual Conference Session 2017 is in Las Cruces, New Mexico, May 31st through June 2nd, and this continues our rotation model of annual conference, moving it around our area. We are in the El Paso district this year, and we are on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday format for our time together at annual conference. One of the things that we look at when we're looking at where to host our annual conference session is to try and find a facility that's going to work very well for us. And our annual conference planning team is very excited about the Las Cruces Convention Center. This is going to be one of the better venues that we've had for our annual conference session. The Las Cruces Convention Center is a relatively new building. It has multiple meeting spaces, and so most of our time together will be at the convention center. We want to go off-site. And one of the nicest features about the Las Cruces Convention Center is, as you can see here on the right of your screen on University Avenue, there is a large, wide concourse where there will be lots of display space and lots of opportunities for catching up with people in the halls and having those side conversations that are so meaningful for us in the New Mexico Annual Conference. Here's another shot of the Las Cruces Convention Center looking to the east towards New Mexico State University, and giving you another shot of the wide concourse there. Just underneath the overhang there is where it starts. Our annual conference session theme is New Places for New People, and that continues our focus on 6 areas of energy and activity for our annual conference. In 2011, we adopted our vision statement, Vision 2020, and identified 6 areas of focus. And we are, for our annual conference sessions, working through those 6 themes, those 6 areas of focus. And this year is all about new places for new people. And hopefully, as you go through some of this content, that theme will pop up and be a nice surprise for you for our time together as a focus of our time in Las Cruces. For our planning purposes, we looked at the scriptural touchstone from the prophet Isaiah 43:19, where the prophet says, "I'm about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." And given our setting there in Las Cruces and the fact that the Rio Grande flows through the city of Las Cruces, but not always, but when it does flow through the city of Las Cruces, it is an event. And people go down to the river to watch it show up. And so this is an opportunity for us to say, well, what would happen if God showed up in a powerful way at our annual conference session? Would it spring forth? Would we not perceive it? Would it be a new thing for our annual conference? New places for new people. Very excited about our guest preacher this year. Reverend George Acevedo is joining us for the entire time that we're in Las Cruces. George is the lead pastor at Grace Church in Florida, in the Florida Annual Conference. Grace Church is one of the leading models of multi-site, multi-campus congregations. They worship in multiple venues throughout the weekend, and George is a leader and facilitator in that process, and also has been very, very active and engaged in recovery ministries and reaching new people in new ways, particularly people who feel like they may be too far gone for God's grace, and yet Grace Church reaches out to them and creates a space for them and leads them into a faithful walk of discipleship. George is also the author of a couple of books. One of the books is Vital, Churches Changing Communities in the World. And the Vital book is a wonderful toolkit for churches trying to figure out how do they engage their community? How do they reach out to their neighbors and become effective in both witnessing to them, but also serving them and sharing the kingdom of God with them? George's newest book is A Graceful Life, God's all-reaching, soul-saving, character-shaping, never-ending love. And I've been telling folks that this is the best contemporary rendition the Wesleyan conception of grace, the Wesleyan understanding of prevenient grace and justifying grace and sanctifying grace, and how grace surrounds us in every aspect of our lives, and God intends to shape our lives, and not just in one moment, but throughout our lives, and for us to be a blessing throughout our lives. George is also a member of the Commission on a Way Forward. This is the Bishop's Commission that is looking at the issue of human sexuality in the United Methodist Church and the future of our denomination. George is one of 32 members of the Commission on a Way Forward. And so George has a great deal of experience in ministry in practical ways and leading in effective ways for multi-site, multi-campus, and recovery ministries. He's a prominent voice and a very effective voice in sharing in very practical ways how to be the church and what it means to be a Wesleyan Christian in our day and age, and then also is one of the key voices at the table for our denominational conversation about the way forward. George will be offering early bird workshops on his book, A Graceful Life, on Tuesday afternoon. There are 2 sessions of A Graceful Life, and so if you have folks in your church that are always looking for Sunday school material or small group material, this is an opportunity to learn and study from the source at our time together in Las Cruces. There will also be teaching sessions on faithfulness to God and fruitfulness for God. These are on Thursday and Friday, and it's been a while since we've had some teaching component at annual conference, and so we wanted to invite George to spend time and share some content with us and actually help us feel equipped and empowered to serve God more faithfully and fruitfully in our mission fields. Also, given George's participation on the Commission on the Way Forward, he will be participating in a question and answer session on the work of the Commission on Thursday afternoon. We'll share very briefly the work of the Commission and how they have progressed thus far and the nature of their time together, and then also some time for some members of our conference to ask questions about the work of the Commission and what that looks like and then what the way forward might look like. Mentioned that George is doing an early bird workshop. We have a number of early bird workshops this year. This is our 2nd year with this education training opportunity for lay people and clergy, and we're very excited. We have great response both last year, and early registration for this year has worked out really well. We have both practical and theoretical and useful workshops for anybody. We have a church finance 101 workshop. We have a workshop on church insurance. We have a workshop on elder abuse, on recognizing and identifying elder abuse and how we can respond to it when we think that it might be happening. We have a workshop on contemplative prayer, a workshop on 12-step ministries and working in the recovery community. What's in it for me? This is a workshop from Rebecca Simon Peter, looking at the consumer mentality that people walk into the church with when they're visiting a church for the first time or looking to join a church. So they often come in with the question, well, what's in it for me? How does this meet my needs? How does this scratch my itch or meet my preferences? And in this workshop, Rebecca will help us identify ways that we can create a shift to not engage that consumerist mentality, but to encourage there to be a more faithful stance and more faithful approach to discipleship so that we shift from being consumers to followers of Jesus. We have a workshop on boomer spirituality. I tell people every opportunity that I get that the fastest growing demographic in the New Mexico Annual Conference is people over the age of 60, sometimes over the age of 65. This is by far the fastest growing demographic in our mission field. And how are we reaching out to those active retirees, people beyond the age of 60 who have a lot of gas left in the tank, who want to give and serve and want to grow in their walk with Jesus? And how are we reaching out to them and being effective and providing them the opportunities to grow? Weird Church is a workshop that's being sponsored by our New Church Development team. This comes out of a book from Beth Ann Estock and Paul Nixon about the cultural changes happening in our world and how much harder traditional church is in reaching new people and younger people. And Weird Church is an opportunity to both understand those cultural shifts, but also some ideas about how we can engage these cultural shifts and be faithful to our traditions and be faithful to our witness and to the gospel, but create new places for new people in new ways. We have a number of folks in our annual conference that are pursuing certification as coaches, and so we have a coach approach workshop if you're interested in learning more about coaching and how coaching might help you grow as a disciple, or how you might be able to use coaching to help somebody else grow in their faith. Mentioned already the Graceful Life workshops with George Acevedo. And then another workshop that I'm very excited about is a rural small church youth ministry workshop. How do we provide effective youth ministry when we're in a small town or a small membership church, or we don't have a whole lot of youth, or all we have are volunteers? How can we be creative and effective in forming disciples among our young people in a smaller setting? Every year when we gather at annual conference, we take up offerings. We try and highlight those offerings that are particular to the district that's hosting us. And so we have a number of offerings from the El Paso district to highlight. One of the offerings will be for the Ridge in El Paso, and the Ridge is our oldest, newest church start. They began worshiping in 2009, 2010, and they have grown to the point now where they are looking at moving to a more permanent location, a rental space in El Paso. And so this is an opportunity for us to lift them up and to celebrate their ministry as a new place for new people and give them a little boost through our offerings. The University of Texas El Paso Wesley Foundation is going through a reboot, restart process. This isn't a completely new place for new people, but this is a place that hasn't existed for a few years, and they're trying to create a new space now for the new people, the young adults, students at UTEP. And so this is a way for us to, again, lift up this college ministry, campus ministry, and support them as they try and reach new people in new ways. We always support our Sacramento Camp scholarships through our offerings, and then we always have a partnership with the South Congo Episcopal area. And this year, our partnership offering will go to support the McGregor Kajoba Endowment Fund. This is an endowment fund that is used to subsidize or supplement the salaries for seminary professors at Mulunguishi Seminary in the South Congo Episcopal area. This is a much needed support as the faculty there have PhDs, advanced degrees, and they don't make a lot of money because it's a very poor Episcopal area. And yet so many of the pastoral leaders in this fast-growing area are being trained by the seminary professors at Mulunguishi. So the endowment fund helps to support them and continue the vital and effective training that's going on for the pastors in the South Congo Episcopal area. El Calvario Mission is in Las Cruces, and they are in the Mesquite district, and they are asking for school supplies and tennis shoes for children for the Mesquite district as they look ahead to back-to-school time this fall. Let's talk a little bit about the business and issues at the New Mexico Annual Conference. One of the things that is important to note is that the Equitable Compensation Commission is not recommending an increase in the minimum compensation for clergy. This is on page 15 in the PreConference Journal. And so if you are on a staff parish relations team or a finance team, or if you are a pastor making minimum compensation in the New Mexico Annual Conference, you should note that there is a recommendation for no increase. This is a recognition that many of our churches are struggling to get by and to support their pastor's package, and want to encourage them to continue to do that without burdening them with an increase. Also want to highlight that the health insurance rates are going to be going up slightly next year. The church's portion of health insurance premiums are going up January 1st, $6 a month for the single rate, $13 a month for the +1 rate, or $17 a month for the family rate. And then clergy should note the increase in their portion, their responsibility for the premiums at open enrollment, which will be in the fall. This year we went to a wider range of options for clergy, and so it's really hard to say in a single slide what the rate increase is going to be. But please pay attention to those rate increases and choose the health insurance plan and the premiums that are going to serve you and your family the best. On page 19 in your pre-conference journal, our Conference Finance Administration is recommending a 2018 spending plan of $2,164,956. This is a decrease from our current spending plan of 2017 of $84,511, a decrease of almost 4%, 3.75%. And this follows a comparable decrease from 2016 to 2017. So our Conference Finance Administration is really trying to budget and create a spending plan well within our means from what the income that we can expect to receive from our local churches. We are in the second year of our tithe model, and we continue to assume 87% compliance and payout of the 8% tithe. We expect local churches to report monthly their operating income, the money that's coming in through the offering plate and through gifts, and sending 8% of that to the conference for our shared ministry. And we assume that 87% of the time that's going to happen. That leads us to the question of how are we doing with our tithe model after the first year? Well, we received 86.3% of our spending plan for 2016. Now, of course, that's 86.3% of the 87% that we were expecting to receive, so about 75%, a little bit more than 75%. We received 93% of our anticipated contributions from the Albuquerque district churches. We received 96.4% of our anticipated contributions from the Clovis district churches, and we received only 69.7% of what we anticipated from the El Paso district churches. 77 of our congregations fully met their reporting and tithing commitment. They reported every month, and they sent in their tithe every month. 52 congregations partially met their commitments, either not reporting every month or not paying their tithe every month. And some of that's the learning process with the new tithe model. And then 11 congregations did not participate at all in 2016. On pages 82 to 87, you will note that there are some constitutional amendments that we will be voting on at this year's annual conference that come to us from the General Conference in Portland. These amendments are debatable, but they are not amendable. We can spend time discussing them, what we like about them, what we don't like about them, whether we like them or not, but we may not change any of the wording on these amendments. These amendments are going to every annual conference in the connection, and the wording must remain the same so that we're all voting on the same things. Further explanation and rationale will be offered during the business session at annual conference, and we will be voting via paper ballots, so be sure to keep track of these. These paper ballots will be in your registration packets if you are eligible to vote at the annual conference session on these constitutional amendments, so please make sure you have your paper ballots with you when it comes time to vote. A note on who is eligible to vote for the constitutional amendments. The discipline is very clear and also very strict on who is eligible to vote. If you are the lay member from your local church, you have the right to vote. If you are the alternate from your local church, you may not have the right to vote if your lay member is already seated. If the lay member is not available, you'll need to work out with that person so that you can vote in the lay member's place. It gets more complicated with clergy. Clergy members in full connection have the right to vote, whether they're active or retired, but provisional members, those who are not yet ordained, associate members, affiliate members, and full-time and part-time local pastors may not vote. In addition, if you are a certified lay minister and you are serving a local church as a lay supply pastor, you may not vote unless you have been sent from your local church as a lay member to annual conference. As I mentioned earlier, a brief rationale for these amendments is in your pre-conference journal on page 82. And I'll go through these quickly here. The first two amendments talk about our position on gender justice and inclusion of everybody in our church. Amendment 1 would add a new paragraph on gender justice after the paragraph on racial justice. Amendment 2 would add the word gender to the equal access language of paragraph 4, which is our equal access, equal governance language in the Constitution. The next two amendments, Amendment 3 and Amendment 4, deal with concerns coming from the nomination process for delegates from the central conferences and also election for bishops in our central conferences. Amendment 3 specifies that for delegates elected to general, jurisdictional, and central conferences, that the nomination process must include election and nomination process from the floor. There was a concern that in some central conferences, bishops were hand-picking delegates to general conference and not having a vote on those delegate elections, and so this adds language to the Constitution specifying that we have to have elections and there must be nominations from the floor in order for those elections to be valid. Amendment 4 clarifies that bishops' elections need to take place at called or regular sessions of jurisdictional or central conferences, and that a bishop may not suspend a called or a regular session of jurisdictional or central conferences in order to extend his or her tenure as bishop. And this is something that's coming to us from the central conferences as a concern that bishops who are not elected for life in their first term there could easily just sort of suspend a called or regular session of the central conference and thereby extending their tenure as bishop. Amendment 5 adds language about accountability for bishops, specifying that the General Conference may adopt provisions related to accountability. This comes from a Judicial Council ruling, and this is really enabling language that permits or basically puts in the General Conference's lap the responsibility of how they might develop a process for accountability for bishops, and whether that would go to the council of bishops or the jurisdictions. But this is really enabling language that creates the opportunity for General Conference to speak on how we might hold bishops accountable. We have some of our own business to deal with at Annual Conference. This is on pages 88 to 92. We have a resolution to affirm our 2016 delegation for the called Special General Conference. It's now scheduled for February 23rd, 2019. The discipline says that unless we choose otherwise, the delegation that's seated, our current delegation to General Conference, will be the delegation that we send to any called or special General Conference. And so this is just a resolution that basically affirms, yes, that's what we want to do. We don't want to have new elections for this special or called General Conference. And this is basically from the conference ministry team. This is for us just to sort of take the temperature of the conference and see what the wish of the conference is. If this resolution is defeated, we'll need to have a motion to have elections at next year's annual conference to seat a special called delegation for the General Conference in February of 2019. We have a resolution from our conference UMW for a commitment to creation care and to create green teams and to avoid the use of styrofoam in our local churches. We have a resolution from our campus ministers to reinstate the Conference Board of Higher Education and Campus Ministry. Every year we have to have a resolution declaring that the rental and housing allowance, that their salary for retired clergy salary may be used for rental housing allowance. We have a small number of rules changes and corrections. We have a rule regarding unspent budgeted funds, or a rule regarding the stabilization fund, really. And this is a rule that has never been implemented. It's been on our books for a long time. It's never been implemented. But basically the rule says that if our stabilization fund reaches 10% of our annual budget, that an automatic distribution will kick in, and that when it gets over 10%, the stabilization fund will go towards campus ministry and Sacramento camps. And the justification for this rule originally was that there was a concern that the conference would just pad the stabilization fund and have a rainy day fund that just continues to grow indefinitely. And the reality was that back in the day when this rule was suggested and adopted, we apportioned the stabilization fund to local churches. And so we were essentially charging local churches to support and create the stabilization fund. And a few years ago, we stopped doing that, and now we support the stabilization fund from the conference endowment and from a distribution of the conference endowment, and we no longer apportion local churches for the stabilization fund. So churches are not being taxed or burdened with the stabilization fund. We also have gone from a situation where our annual budget as an annual conference was about $4 million to now it's just over $2 million. And the difference between $400,000 in our stabilization fund and $200,000 in our stabilization fund is significant, even though it's the same percentage of our operating budget. And so what our CFNA is asking is, since we are under a new tithe model, we are apportioning resources differently from our local churches. We no longer apportion for the stabilization fund, and we are in a different age in terms of our conference budget. We're asking that we simply strike that rule regarding the stabilization fund. We have a correction in our rules regarding safe sanctuaries. Our current rules say that safe sanctuaries will be overseen by the conference youth director. We haven't had a conference youth director for a few years now. This just changes the language to say that the conference staff person designated to oversee safe sanctuaries is the person who will oversee safe sanctuaries. This just sort of clarifies what's happening in our conference office now. And then we have a correction in our rules regarding the composition of the Joint Incapacity Committee. Our conference rules say the discipline prescribes 7 members, and the discipline actually requires or prescribes that we have 5 members. And so this reconciles our rules with the Book of Discipline. Let's go over some of our highlights of our schedule. We have early bird workshops Tuesday afternoon, and then we have Worship in the Wilderness hike on Tuesday evening. This will be at 4:50 at the Dripping Springs entry area there in the Oregon Mountains. And this is going to be an opportunity for a worship experience out of doors. A friend of mine in the Alaska Conference has a church called Ascend, and they are a church that basically is a hiking church. They meet every week. They have devotion on the trail and communion on the trail. And so this is a worship opportunity that is a little outside of the box, new places for new people. Wednesday, Registration opens at 9 o'clock. Orientation is at 10 for new delegates, new members of our annual conference. District meetings will be at 11. Our legacy luncheon, where we honor our retirees and remember those who have passed away in the last year, will be at the noon hour. And we ask that you do register for this meal so that we can get a good head count for that. Opening worship is at 2 o'clock, and Bishop Bledsoe is going to be preaching at opening worship. Our business session will start at 3:30, and then something very different is going to happen during that business session. At 4 o'clock, we're going to have a stretch break, and throughout the day on Wednesday, while all this is going on, the churches in the Las Cruces area, United Methodist and other denominations, are going to be engaging in a community-wide missions and outreach push starting at 7 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday. And about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they're going to be organizing a push that we are welcome to be a part of. And so at 4 o'clock, we'll take a stretch break during our business session. And for those guests and visitors and members and other folks who would like to join in this mission outreach push, there will be some instructions about how you can join them. And those of us who will be about our business will continue our business there shortly afterwards. Then we'll close our business while the folks are still serving the community, and then we'll all gather together for food, fellowship, and prayer at the plaza, the downtown plaza in Las Cruces at 5:30. And this is an opportunity for us to bless the community of Las Cruces, to pray over them, to serve them throughout the day for those who would like to serve them and be in mission, and also to gather together and share our witness with others in the city of Las Cruces. On Thursday, we have our executive and lady sessions at 9 o'clock. Our business session is at 10:30. Lunch break is at 12. Our business session will meet again at 1:30, and this will include our Q&A with George Acevedo on the Commission on the Way Forward. George will offer a teaching session at 4:30 on faithfulness to God. And then at 6 o'clock, we'll have our 5-Star Ministries dinner. This is sponsored by our Conference Board of Global Ministries, and this will be the opportunity for us to celebrate those Cinco Estrellas churches and all the ministry outreach opportunities that exist in our annual conference. And then afterwards, at 7:30 at the Convention Center, we'll have Jazz Vespers worship and a reception, a dessert reception at 8:30. Friday, George is going to lead us in a workshop on fruitfulness for God at 9 o'clock. We have our last business session at 10 o'clock. And then our ordination and commissioning luncheon is going to be at noon. And the service of ordination and commissioning will be at 2 o'clock. And that will be at St. Paul's United Methodist Church. And the address is on the screen there at 225 West Briggs Avenue in Las Cruces. And then we hope to be done about 4 o'clock and sending forth after a brief reception. If you have any other questions or concerns, you can get any information about lodging, registration, pre-conference journal at the New Mexico Conference website, and our annual conference link there is Annual Conference 2017. Looking ahead to the fall, just want to highlight the dates for our Bishop's Fall itineration. Given the work of the Commission on the Way Forward and some of the conversations that we'll be having in our annual conference, this is an opportunity for us to spend some time together with our bishop and other leaders to have some conversations about how we are doing as an annual conference and where we are as an annual conference and what a way forward for us might look like. I hope that you take time to make plans to be there, and I look forward to seeing you there. And before we do that, I look forward to seeing you in Las Cruces. Thank you so much for this time, and I hope this has been very helpful for you.